Welcome to the Mostro Podcast, where we meet with trailblazers reshaping music, art, and technology. I'm your host, Kim Bingham, and today I'm thrilled to chat with the incredibly talented Violetta Zironi, a singer-songwriter who transformed her career by diving headfirst into the world of Web3 and NFTs. From navigating a challenging start in the traditional music industry to becoming a leading voice for artists in blockchain, Violetta's journey is nothing short of inspiring. Stick around to hear how she's breaking barriers, building community, and creating a sustainable future as an independent musician. Let's get started. Violetta, thank you so much for being on the show. Really great to have you.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah, me too. So let's help artists understand why they should go into Web3 following your brilliant example. And let's roll back to the beginning of your journey into Web3. You find yourself in the deal with Sony that is not what you expected. And then you find out about the blockchain. What round when is this? This is during COVID. Kind of situate us there at the beginning and let's start.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you pretty much summarized what happened in the space of a decade. It's obviously, but you know how it is, they say it takes about a decade before you really find, right, the key to what you want to do. So yeah, when I was 18, which was 11 years ago now. I signed a major label deal with Sony Music after I did X Factor in Italy. So I just kind of, applied to be an X Factor and I got in and then I got all the way to the final, which was a great experience. But then afterwards, literally the day after the X Factor final, the Sony executives invited me to their office. Very, in a very chill way. There was no like, come here, we're gonna make you sign a deal. It was more like, come have a chat, right? So I go have a chat, and they just put a a contract in front of me for 5 albums, which is insane. Like it's really really long, and there was no advance within it, and there was nothing. It was a 360 deal with no advance for 5 albums. And I didn't know anything. I was still in high school. Like I was still finishing high school and it was just on the spot. So I literally didn't think of calling my parents. I didn't think of calling a lawyer. I just signed it. I just thought, I have a job for the next 5 years. Let's go. Like, that's amazing. So, and then I realized what I'd done and what the contract implied. And for the following 2 years, I had, a bit of a struggle, dealing with the major because obviously what they do is if you don't very luckily get, successful in the first month, then they'll just kind of put you to the side and keep you there, hoping that something will happen in the future and they get to reap the rewards. So for 2 years, struggled in communication. They wouldn't even get back to emails. They did a few bad things as well that I'm not gonna, necessarily get into right now, but that's kind of when my spirit of rebellion sort of, I think, got initiated, and got triggered because I was like, how is it possible? I'm 18. How am I already like robbed of everything? I don't even have it, you know? And then I managed to get out of the deal because I did deliver the album that I was supposed to release and they didn't release it. So there was breach of contract on their end, which was lucky for me. So I was able to get out of the deal and move on, be independent. So I moved abroad. I lived in London, then I moved to Berlin and became, what we know as independent songwriters, which is probably most of the people that will watch this video or this podcast, where you release on Spotify, you book your tours, you do a lot of promotion on your own, right? And that's kind of what I did for the following 7 years, together with a lot of other things, because as we know, our music doesn't necessarily pay for itself. You know what I mean? Other things pay for our music, and we do music because we love it. So I was doing acting. I was lucky I never had to get a job, like a side job. Was doing acting, voiceover, writing for like commercials and things like that that would all like supply my original albums until obviously COVID hit. Um, and at that time I had already I just sold out my first European tour as a headliner, so things were looking up. And then COVID hit And of course, for however many years, 3 years, we were all locked in. Especially where I lived at the time. Germany was pretty strict with the rules. And for 2 years, I just kind of sat at home and wrote songs and realized things were not like working out. And in the meantime, I had a big argument with my manager of 4 years who decided to freeze my bank account because I wanted to part ways. So I was broke in COVID with a frozen bank account, like just nothing left. But I had recorded an album, and so that was kind of my last hope. And then when I went home for the holidays, actually coming up on 3 years ago, in December 2022, my mom told me, "Before you quit, do you know about NFTs?" And that's when, like,
Mm,
Mom! I didn't.
mm.
Yeah, she was
That's
like,
beautiful, beautiful.
so, and here we are 3 years later, haven't looked back. So
Mhm.
it changed my life.
Yeah, and so what was this? So mom says to you, "Have you heard about NFTs?" What do? You go online, Google it, you find what do you find? How do you find your way?
Exactly, yeah, I pretty much did that. We were talking about it because she'd heard, obviously, it was like the 2021 bull run, as right, if there were outrageous things happening in the NFT space and Web3, like monkey pictures for $1 million and things like that. So it was hype, and I remember her mentioning Snoop Dogg was creating NFTs with his music. And so that was really intriguing. So like you said, I just Googled it, found some podcasts just like this one. And I remember walking through my hometown in Italy during Christmas and listening to a bunch of artists that are now really good friends of mine, speaking about their endeavors in Web3 as music NFT artists and sort of like seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, because the way they were describing it was, this has allowed me to be myself from many, many standpoints, be the artist I always wanted to be, not just relegated to making like this one kind of music, or look a certain way like it used to be when I was trying to comply with the industry, but now I can be like a holistic artist. And people are collecting music like you would collect art to put on your walls, which blew my mind. Because why can't we do that with music? Because music is in the air, it's intangible. You can't really grab it unless you have a vinyl, which is a piece of plastic. It's not really like great. But with NFTs, you can create authentic digital copies of a piece of music, which is wild for me. Now you can finally own a piece of music, a copy, right? Authenticated copy of music, which, was incredible. So I dove into the whole rabbit hole, and within a couple of weeks, I'd met some people that helped me navigate more of the technical aspect of things, and helped me set up my own collections. So I started releasing my songs as NFTs, and it kind of escalated really fast, to be honest. And to be honest, I didn't look back. I was like, this is it. Like, I'm gonna do this. I had 6 months to save my career. I literally gave myself a deadline.
Yeah.
Um, if in 6 months I haven't changed drastically where I'm at, then I'm getting a job, basically.
Yeah, and so in doing my research on you, I came upon Nifty Sax. Was he kind of instrumental in helping you with the beginning?
100%. Yeah, shout out to him. Nifty Sax is an Italian saxophone player. And him and Wei Z, who is a developer, blockchain solidity developer. Together, they created a entity called Nifty Music, which was meant to incubate a few select artists and help them set themselves up for success. Basically, bring them to from zero to sold out. And I was their first artist that just established that entity, and then we met, and I was like, "Hey, can you like give me a little bit of advice?" And he was like, "We actually started Nifty Music. We'll help you." And so I was lucky in that sense. Um, so yeah, I don't think they're operating anymore as Nifty Music because, the market kind of took a south turn a little bit. But mostly I think we all realized that the most difficult part about being in Web3, which means basically like having ownership of your product, and selling digital products, the hard part is not the tech side of things. The hard part is selling your digital products, you know? So not every artist is like inclined to being a salesperson.
Right. So I guess that part of it is the technology is great, and what I'm hearing is the technology is great. It's you're able to access it to create these NFTs, but actually selling them afterwards is the key. Is also is the biggest challenge, right? One of the biggest challenges, and so the artist has to be a bit entrepreneurial and self and be good at self promotion in that sense. Is that what you're saying?
100% correct. Yeah. And I think it should be that way without using Web3, in theory. But I feel like honestly, the streaming platforms have sold us this dream and this illusion that by just being on there, magically people find us. And so we just need to continue releasing, feed the algorithm. But in reality, that's not how people sell things. Like, that's not how Amazon works. Just because your product's on Amazon doesn't mean it's going to sell. So it's just an easy way to access it. And that's how I think of the streaming platforms, really. It's just like just the window, right? But in reality, we should be our own salespeople or hire someone to do that for us. You know what I mean? But with Web3, like, because people are collecting music like it's art mostly, and to have a relationship with you as an artist, because that's why patrons collect, is because they want to be involved with an artist and their career. Then you have to dedicate a lot of time, of course, to your collectors and patrons, which I find amazing. It brings me a lot of value. But maybe some artists are more introverted, or like they have to find their own way to do it, is the thing. I think it's absolutely possible. Has to feel right for you.
Right, right. And so you start up putting these you start making NFTs, and you said it snowballed pretty fast. What is it that you create the NFT? This is for a new community. This is not the regular Spotify, YouTube, Facebook communities. These are you're in Web3. Where are you finding the community? I understand X Spaces is an important thing. Discord, well, how are you navigating this? What did you do? How did you build your community in Web3?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I'm starting to realize, like, now after 3 years, when we say you're in Web3, at the time, I thought this was like, just a weird, like, niche of the internet, like a cult almost type thing. But all it is just Web3 is just what the internet is going to look like. All of the internet is going to look like in the next like 10 to 20 years. It's just going to be that way.
Yeah.
And the people that are experimenting with it now are they have high conviction, right? And so it's their everyday obsession. And so they're basically, what they're doing is they're experimenting with art and all different applications to see how far we can push it, right? And how much more we can come up with every day. I find it exciting because we get to be at the forefront of what everything is going to look like in 20 years, right? So it's really, really exciting. But what I didn't understand this at the time. Honestly, I'm saying this now, like 3 years later. But at the time, I thought, okay, like, these people, they're just art collectors or crypto fans. They love crypto, and it's gonna be really hard for me to bring my Web 2, so to speak, like normal fans, to Web 3
Mhm.
and get them to use technology. So I'm not gonna focus on that at all. I was, like, burned out from it, and I was like, "I'll just start over. I'll start over." But I'm not starting over, I have 10 years of experience. But I can start fresh rather than start over. Like, I can now be whoever I want. Like, when you move to a new town, new city, new country, and you're like, "Okay, now I'm, like, new me." So what I did was I joined some Discord channels of NFT communities that I found on Twitter. So I would go on Twitter and search hashtag NFT, hashtag like Bitcoin, hashtag Web3, and just follow a bunch of people. And then I would join their Discord server, Music NFT. I would find like communities about music NFTs and follow everybody. Then I found Twitter Spaces, and I started joining. And Twitter Spaces, basically people are talking to each other, like clubhouse rooms, and you can listen or speak. And then eventually people started inviting me to sing on the Twitter Spaces live because I just play guitar and sing. So they'd be like, come up and sing a song. And that became my thing. So that's how I promoted myself. Like I did 3,000 hours of Twitter Space busking in 2022, like every day, you know, like really hustling, right? And then I would follow up with everybody, like DM people. We really try to foster the community, like one community member at a time. Um, I think that's a good approach for people that are going to spend more money on you and they want to have a relationship with you.
Yeah, and how are you maintaining that community now? I mean, you were on all these other Discords, Twitter Spaces. You have your own. You do your own X Space. You're doing your own X Space now. How are you maintaining your community?
Yeah, pretty much at the same time that I started going to other people's Twitter Spaces and Discords, I started hosting mine. So what I would do was I go to other people's and then I say, "Hey, come to mine. If you want to hear me sing more, come to my space, on Tuesday, whatever." And I started doing it every day. Like every day I was hosting. I opened my Discord channel. So I would have like people in there. Then I started hosting Zoom concerts every week for the people that held my NFTs, and I still do it to this day. I have one tomorrow. So, like, for 3 years, every week, unless I'm sick or traveling, I do a concert for them, and there's still, like, a lot of people showing up. I have, private calls with my collectors and my community. I have a group chat. It's like, I dedicate a lot of time to the community.
Yeah, and what about those Web2 fans? You said you're moving to a new town. It's a new you. What happened to the fans that were following you over the past 10 years? Did they finally catch on and you see them purchasing your NFTs too, or where are they in this whole conversation?
Yeah, I mean, it's weird, right? Because I had a lot of followers in the Web 2 like realm, like 200,000 followers that I built over almost a decade, and people would come to my shows, but thing was like I didn't really have a direct line of communication with them because I didn't really know like who they were. I didn't do a good job managing my contact list and my email list and just all the data points that you need. And I remember when I did my first like sold out headline tour in Europe, it was like the age range of the audience was a bit older. So like maybe they're not on Instagram all day long, maybe they don't even listen on Spotify so much. Maybe they just go and buy the song on iTunes kind of thing. But you don't really get that kind of data. So yeah, I didn't really have many ways to bring them over. And only now, like I think people are starting to look. I mean, for the last 3 years, I obviously posted about what I was doing, but I didn't really focus on them. I was just like, okay, like you can listen to my old songs on streaming platforms if you want. But with all due respect, I love that you love my music, but it's not like I was really making a living through that fan base. You know what I mean? So at one point, you have to like choose what your priority is. Like if you have a really nice but smaller group of fans that help you make a living and support your career, then you should focus on those rather than, maybe 20 or 50,000 people out there that are just kind of consuming for free.
Right. Yeah, and
That's sorry.
I'm getting from what you're saying too that maybe are the NFT buyers, yeah, your audience in Web3 tends to be a little bit younger than the audience that you had in Web2. Is that also
Yeah, I think
different
sure.
demographic?
It's hard to say, but I think yes. I think a little bit younger. I don't care, like, honestly, what age they are, but because I also have people in my community, NFT community, people that are in their 60s. So, there's all kinds of ages. Um, but what I noticed is my Web3 community is more diverse. And it's not just in terms of demographic, but like an age, but in terms of background and lifestyle. And it's just different from what the industry had told me my target audience was.
Hmm,
Which is interesting because
very
they said,
interesting.
"Oh, you have to target, like 40 and up, fans of Nora Jones, like fans of whatever. And then turns out, like, instead of targeting, you're actually limiting yourself because what I noticed is there's people that are really big buyers of my NFTs that told me straight to my face, I would never listen to your music if I hadn't met you and I hadn't gotten to know you and I hadn't seen you live and hadn't gotten an insight on your process and experienced your music on a deeper level. I just wouldn't stop if your song came on the radio, I would shuffle, and that is amazing to me because it allows people to support an artist and get to fall in love with your music, learn to love it for a longer lasting relationship.
That's beautiful. Yeah, and very interesting insight on how the industry uh, focuses one way, and then the reality could be extremely different. Let me ask you about live performance. How have your live performances changed? You're doing private live streams for your some of your NFT holders, live concerts. You're doing POAPs. Tell me about live. How being in Web3 has changed that for you.
Yeah. Live is an interesting aspect because, like, for the first year, obviously I was very much online, playing live on X Spaces, on Zoom, doing a lot of streaming, right? Live streaming, which a lot of artists could look at and say, "Oh, I wanna go out on the road." But you gotta remember I was starting fresh. So I was building my community again from, like, all over again. So I needed that time to do that, and it's great that you can do it from home, quite honestly, like, think about it, you don't have to go anywhere and spend any money to be on the road. You can just kinda do it from home. And then the following year, my live activity started picking up. So I play a lot. Like this year, I played, mm, 27 shows, 28, something like that around the world. I played, oh my God, like everywhere in the US and Europe, Singapore, Hong Kong, like, Dubai. I played on an airplane. I've done like the craziest things. Um, it's not what you would expect necessarily, like go and play at a festival that's just about music, and the sound is great. No, like you have to think that you're performing in a new industry that's learning and experimenting about a lot of things. Um, and you're bringing music to it.
Mhm.
So it's kind of a different like mindset. I'm here because I'm bringing music. People value it a lot. Um, they pay me to perform, of course. Like sometimes I'll do it for free if I think it's a really good, setting or opportunity. But like that's a quite a significant chunk of my income now as an artist, which more than it used to pay before. To be honest, before Web3. So yeah.
Amazing. Are you doing POAPs, proof of attendance protocol, NFTs at any of your shows?
Sometimes,
Yeah.
sometimes I do, yeah. I have I have these guitar picks that I created with NFC chips inside. For those that don't know, it's called near field connection or communication. Where it's like when you tap two iPhones and they talk to each other, basically. So you can tap the guitar pick with your phone, and then there's a pop-up and you can download the app, and within there you can claim an NFT or you can buy my vinyl. It's like almost like a business card, but in the guitar pick and you can claim an NFT within it. So I have that. Yeah, with the
And how
speakers
do
went.
and that's available at your shows, or how or is that available on
Yeah,
your website?
only at my shows.
Okay. Very cool. That's so cool. Great. Well, I know we can get into tech things about specific chains, and then we'll get to that, I think, when we talk about a little bit later in the conversation. Let's talk about artists getting onto the blockchain. Now, you've got musicians on blockchain, and let's talk about why artists aren't in it, why they should, and what resources are out there. So, what's your take on all of that? Artists, listen up.
Yeah, it's a large like conversation, I think, because like I mentioned earlier, we are at the dawn of a new digital like era basically. And before I was even into this, I didn't know we were even in a digital era. Like you're not consciously thinking, oh, this is web 2, or like how different the web was, between now and like the 90s. But then you start thinking and sort of categorizing decades, right? Where we were. So like in the 90s and the 80s, the internet was just being born. So, even sending an email was like a big deal, right? And then in the early 2000s and, up until 2008 or so, there was just the regular internet, like streaming and all that kind of stuff, downloading things from the internet, but always from like other, like external servers. And then since the blockchain was invented in 2008 with Bitcoin, it changed. It became decentralized, which is a word, right? That I didn't know what it meant really in this context before, but it means that you're not relying on like a company to let you do your activity, but you're relying on a network of computers that work together. And if one goes down, the network still runs, right? So you're basically protected. Um, so I think artists should start look into this. If they don't have time to become tech pioneers, it's fine. There are ways to get into it that are easy. Honestly, there's so much progress being made with platforms in the last like year or two where you can really use it without knowing you're using it, which is the goal, right? Like that's where we want to get to. But I find it interesting to take a look behind the scenes, right? Because I feel like if you get involved, you have a chance to have a say on how it would look like in 10 years. Like literally those platforms are coming to artists like me and asking me, how should I do this? Because you did it without the tools, without the interface. You did it with like the raw tech components. So how should we build our platform? And I want to be in that position because I get to have a say in what the future will look like, Um, so yeah, I mean, and now of course it's cool getting in early. Imagine if you could get into, you know, one of the first people to ever use Google. That would be crazy, and you would know more than anybody else. So yeah.
Yeah, and so how do we catch the tiger by the tail for artists are non-technical? We struggle with that. We're burnt out by technology. We feel exploited by the platforms that are out there. So we're all a bit wary of doing anything tech. And here comes a new technology, Web3, that has a lot of promise, and you're proof positive of how promising this whole sector is. What would you say? I mean, we can listen to X Spaces and and Google stuff to look up. Is there any kind of specific resources that you could suggest that artists could look to, like musicians on the blockchain, for example? Maybe you could throw out a few helpful hints how to get
Yeah,
where to start.
100%. Yeah. So we've created myself and a few other musicians who utilize the blockchain and Web3 to put out their music have created sort of a collective. It's not nothing really like official. It's just about having a home that we can come back to and sort of exchange advice and mostly just welcome new people. It's called Musicians on Blockchain Mob, which is, kind of a short and catchy name. Musicians that are, done with the traditional ways. They're almost like activists in a way, but the reason why we wanted to do this is so that we could show the world that there is an alternative. So whoever wants to make a change in their career as a musician can come to us, and we can little by little, with the resources we have, guide them into basically finding the tools and shaping their career the way they want using this technology. What I recommend is just like reach out to me, find me on Instagram, on X, on LinkedIn, Facebook, whatever you want, and just reach out and we'll put you in the group, and then you can kind of grow with us. And that's, you know just it's very, it's nothing like, "Okay, go to a platform and do this," or, like, read whatever, like, the instructions. It's more like, be with us and you'll absorb, right? And we'll guide you however we can. But I would also recommend, looking into platforms that are out there. There's a platform that I really like called Curious. That's basically just, and I don't work for them or anything. I just find it as one of the easiest ways to sell digital products. It's just like it's like selling an online course. There's these platforms that allow you to do this, but on Curious, you're actually creating NFTs with them on the back end. So they're real ownable assets. When you sell a digital course that's not on the blockchain, you're not buying anything, you're just unlocking something, access to something. Whereas when you buy a digital product on Curious, you own that piece of the internet, basically, which is the behind the scenes, like technical difference. There's also a platform called HIO, which HIO is Web3 streaming, which I find really cool because it doesn't feel any different from any streaming platform like Tidal or Spotify. But if you pay $10 a month as a subscription and you only listen to me, your money goes to me. It doesn't go to like pro rata, like on Spotify, and you can buy NFTs directly from the artist and sell tickets well within the platform. So that's really cool. Um, yeah, just a few resources there.
That's great. Well, I think we're gonna hold on to the mob suggestion, and thanks a lot for shouting out those platforms as well, Curious and Hio. I think it's really early. It's still super early days for all of these platforms coming out, and it is for artists. It's time for artists to get in and push the technology to its limits to see what it can do. So yeah, let's talk about actually what your vision is for the future of all of this. Let's say for you, for yourself, what you're doing and what you see for yourself in with the technology available and everything that can happen with and how you can expand your career. So let's talk about those projects. And I'd like to know also your vision for the future. So where would you like to start? You want to talk about what you're up to?
Yeah, for sure. So my big vision, I guess, as a musician and in life, I would like to see a world where music is considered like as real art and treated like real art, not just consumed passively, right? Because that's how we interact with music nowadays. We just consume it, right? We just take it in, spit it out, pretty much. Whereas, from my experience in the last 3 years, it doesn't have to be that way. Like people can really, really build a connection and make music part of their life and own it, right? Like they own art. So I would love to see music in museums one day, that people get to experience music in a different way, like focus on it, go back to like slow, and I think right now with technology advancing at light speed, it's really hard to keep up. AI, and all that stuff, humanity and taking a moment to just experience a piece of music and let it speak to you will become more and more valuable. So I want to try and open up that avenue for artists, and just enable it, make artists feel like it can be possible, right? You can aspire to it. So, and I know it's possible. I've recently sold a song for a significant amount. It was 1 Bitcoin, which when it sold, it was like $60,000, like one song without giving away any rights to the song. It's a
Fabulous.
copy, like a unique copy of the song, the only digital authenticated copy of the song. And the collector, whom I'm really, really grateful to, obviously, really values that piece of music, just for what it is and the way it speaks to them. So, yeah, I would like to see more artists do that, and I want to continue on that path, basically.
Okay. And let me ask you also about the actually exclusivity part of that. So the song that you sold for a Bitcoin, that song is also available to listen to online, correct? You have a YouTube link for it. How do you see the exclusivity between selling the song and then actually making it available to the public to listen to? What's your strategy around that sort of thing?
No real strategy, honestly, because I see a big difference between, again, consuming and owning. It's like when you go to the Louvre and you see the Mona Lisa, you don't own the Mona Lisa. You can look at it however long you want, but it doesn't make it yours. You know what I mean? And so you don't have all the benefits that come with ownership. Just like you can rent a house or you can own a house. There's different benefits with both of those. If you own it, then you really have freedom. You can sell it, you can gift it, you can keep it. It can be an asset that can grow in value. There's more risk to owning, of course, but it's just like people own art and then exhibit it in museums. Actually, it's almost better if people know about it, right? And the more exposure it gets because it makes the ownership even more valuable. So I don't have a problem with it being available online. And because it's on Bitcoin, it's an NFT on Bitcoin and it's immutable, it can never be taken down. It's also publicly available because that's another big deal about the blockchain. Everything is viewable. So, it changes how the world works because like right now, pretty much nothing is transparent, right? We don't know what the banks do, really. But we know what happens on Bitcoin, right? And so I can't really stop that, and I don't wish to because I see a big difference between owning and just viewing.
Okay, very cool. And what would you say if you have, well, first let's ask you about your plans, what you have going on over the next few months. Here we are, we're talking, it's the end of 2024. We're going into 2025. The talk in Web3, of course, is of a bull run that's coming up that will obviously rise all boats that are in Web3, including for musicians on blockchain. Where do you see what are the projects, if you can talk about any of them that you have in the works?
For sure. Yeah. I'd love to talk about my tour that I'll do next year, which I think is kind of a good example of what you can do with a community built in a decentralized way. So you really have contact with them and you really know a lot about them and you're all directly invested in like growing the artist. So because I'm very tied to my community, I know pretty much where they live. Like I know where they live. I know where they're located and what their bandwidth is. So last year I put out a poll and I said, I'm planning a tour around where my holders live. Who wants to be involved? And 18 locations kind of popped up around the US, all over the country, which is crazy. And of course, abroad as well. But I was like, I'm going to focus on the US first and kind of try it out there. And so, what we're going to do is all my holders that live in these 18 cities are going to be my local promoters, and they're in charge of finding the venue and promoting the show. So, I don't have to do it. I just have to coordinate them and the goal is it's gonna be free shows, right? Because that's it. Like I don't need to tour to make a living because I'm making a living selling my product, which is my music. And I choose to tour to bring value to my holders, the people that have supported me, but also as a promotion round. Because what's gonna happen is they're gonna invite everyone they know. So it's gonna be small shows, like 100 people, right? Of people in real life communities, families, friends, whatever. Um, and that night, they're gonna come home with their first NFT, basically. They're gonna leave the venue with their first NFT. I'm gonna onboard all of them thanks to my local connections, basically. And I don't have an agent. I don't have like a tour promoter. I don't have anything or booking agents, nothing. I or like a tour manager either, because I know I have people in every city that will take care of me, basically. So yeah, that's an exciting thing, I
That
think,
is
for
very
next
cool. Yeah, and so let's ask, since you're able to finance your work and your professional career by the sale of NFTs, what is your team right now? Who's working with you that you count on a day to day?
Um, basically, it's a one-person team. It's me. I have I have 2 moderators in my Discord that sort of help me, like, keep the Discord under control and sort of talk to people, when they need something, resolve issues or whatever. And then I don't have a manager. I have people that, like, work with me, on a case to case, basis. So I have someone that helps me like negotiate rates for my shows and partnerships and collaborations. And then yeah, basically one other person that does similar things, but for something else. So yeah, but I don't have like a fixed team really. Definitely
Okay.
not like an artist would have. Yeah.
Right. All right. So basically one woman operation, and have guitar will travel. This is fantastic. It's interesting. You've got a fantastic profile of it's like the model profile of an entrepreneurial, self-sufficient, um, warm and welcoming, independent artist. And these are the qualities that, from what I'm hearing, you kind of need to, well, have to have an independent career in any field anyway. But as an artist going into new technology and in moving into this new town, having those traits definitely is a huge, huge plus. So kudos to you, bravo, Violetta.
Thank you. And I'm not gonna lie, like I don't want to paint this as easy. Okay. It's I work all the time, as I'm sure you do. Like if you're a solo entrepreneur and not only are you like, creating a business, but you're also making the product and the art, it's a lot. And I don't have a lot of time to make the music. So let's say only 10% of my time is dedicated to just purely making music. But for me, it's worth it because I know that that 10% is mine and I can make the music I want and I don't have to follow any rules. And that to me satisfies me more. It's more fulfilling than trying to make a song for an algorithm. So it's worth it to me. I'm definitely looking to expand my team. So if anyone out there's, I am actually looking to like have a more stable team because it's starting to become like a little bit too overwhelming.
Mhm.
Um, yeah.
That's see, that's a good problem to have, let's say, and let's hope that more and more independent artists like you have that problem to be able to to build up this new way of working and living that's available to us. Thanks so much for leading the way in that way. It's amazing, Violetta.
Thank you. And yeah, I just want people to realize that they can because it's what clicked in my brain. I was like "No, no, no, like, there's no other ways to do this. You have to follow the rules of the industry." But then I realized, no, you don't. Like, you really don't. And it doesn't have to be the blockchain. It can be it's more of a mentality. It's like a mindset. You only wanna sell vinyl? Okay, like, focus on that. Like, go all in on one thing that you know you love and you can sustain, and it's unique to you. Become the master at it, the best. And yeah, and then just focus on that. The blockchain is just, it makes it easier, I think, for all the reasons that we talked about. But yeah, it doesn't have to be that. So I don't know. I'm excited to see more people, like you said, in the bull market. I started because of the last bull market because I heard about it in the news. Basically, my mom heard about it in the news, so I'm excited to see. I think more and more artists will come this year because it'll have more exposure. So I'm excited to see.
Yeah, it's an exciting, exciting time ahead. Yeah. Thanks, Violetta, for being on the show. Really such a pleasure and so much great information to share with everyone out there listening to this podcast. And I wish you continued success. We're just going to continue watching you move and shake and develop your career and your beautiful music and all of the new innovations and groundbreaking things that you're doing. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Kim.
That's it for today's episode of the Mostro Podcast. A huge thank you to Violetta Zironi for sharing her inspiring story and insights into Web3 and NFTs. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave us a review, and share it with a friend or musician who needs to hear this. You can follow Violetta and her incredible journey on violettazironi.com. Until next time, tune in and turn up for innovation.